start. I will take the position here. So first of all, I would like to thank you for joining us to this executive session on integrating transport for people and goods. My name is Elina Konstantinopoulou. I'm a head of sector for transport and logistics at Ertico, and I will be the moderator for this session. The session will explore innovative strategies for moving both people and goods into an efficient, safe, and reliable manner. The session will last 90 minutes, and it's going to be structured into three main topics. First of all, how transport supply meets demand for people and goods. Second is, what are the transport solutions that are out there that can fit the demand for infrastructure, for the travelers and for the goods? And last but not least, we are going to conclude with our speakers on suggestions for an integrated transport for people and goods. So as an audience, you will have the possibility to ask questions after each thematic topic. And before I would like to move on, I would like to introduce you to our today's speakers. First of all, I would like to thank you for joining me here. I would like to first introduce Mr. Klaus Rosema. He's the Chief Technology Officer at DINIC, a European mobility energy technology company. Klaus is active in international ITS community, serving at Ertico, at the ITS World Congresses, BOD, and also at the European Team 2.0 platform. Mr. Martin Boom from Austriatech, he works as a head of unit for mobility systems and ITS deployment at Austriatech, a federal agency for technological measures where he provides to the Austrian Transport Ministry policy support on ITS. Mr. Nico Zordig from TNO. His drive is to make innovations work, and for the past 10 years he has been involved in both mobility and transport, and he's currently a manager sustainable transport and logistics at TNO, and he's also involved at the Dutch Lean and Green program. Liam Fassam, he's working as a senior lecturer, supply chain management at the University of Northampton, and he's also a director of Center for Excellence for Logistics and Supply, and researcher of topics of supply chain. And last but not least, Mr. Sasa Westerman. He's in charge for the development of the holistic intermodal traffic management for the Port of Hamburg. And one of the most interesting projects is Smartport, where he's also going to talk about it today with us. And he's also responsible for some innovative topics in V2X and autonomous driving. Thank you very much for joining me to this executive session. And I would like to start the session by a bit setting the scene. I said to you before that we are going to structure the sessions into three thematic topics. So the first topic is a bit how transport supply meets demand. As you know, we are discussing about EU objectives, about decoupling. We are talking about a low carbon and energy efficient economy. We are discussing about, after the COP21 conclusions, they came up to the conclusions that 90% of the mobility is coming from people, from their trips of people. 60% of freight is linked to the last mile delivery. And we have a lot of policies out there, national policies, European policies. We also have socioeconomic trends, digitalization, and new technologies. And we are facing a big technology boom. So we're discussing about automation, we're discussing about Internet of Things, big data, Industry 4D, and also a lot of trends like aging, demographic changes, consumer trends, etc. So there is a need to understand how these different trends bring some benefits for the overall integrated transport for people and goods. So I would like to ask my first question to Nico. Taking into account these different technological transformations, what areas in the transport research and innovation you think should be prioritized in the short term to achieve this balance between transport supply and demand?
If I'm going to think about what we hear today as well as ITS, logistics, persons, etc., there's a lot of talk about technology push. But if you and what you see is that logistics is a very important field where we start pilots, where we do things because they're professional drivers, professional transport. They've got a lot of systems, but still. There's a gap between the logistic fields and the ITS field. And we do pilots together, but the implementation afterwards is not really taking up. That's what we see for the last, I think, 5 to 10 years. So I think what we have been doing up to now, sort of a technology push for logistics, please use it. But the logistic transport sector is a sector where the margins are very low, and it's quite difficult, where the competition is high, and very difficult to adopt technology just to adopt them. And I think it's very useful if we look at it in a different way, because the logistic field today, the logistic transport sector is very prone to benefits. In the previous session that you had over there, Mariah said something about lean and green, and that helps because it gives incentives. And I think if you look at that way, where, for example, governments, local governments, work together with logistic fields and work together with the logistics sector to go for an objective. And the objective might be to go for the Paris objectives in 2030. And if they go for achieving lower CO2 emissions, if they go for it together, then you look at a different way of collaboration where you need the logistic field to change, to do things differently, to come with, to adopt some things. But if you do it together, then you have to, they're going to change if you give them incentives, like green waves, like longer driving times, like delivery good in more flexible times. But to do that, they need ITS. And then you look differently at a collaboration between what's being ITS, what's logistics, and what is the demands of local and national authorities.
Thank you very much, Nico. A bit around the area of freight. So we have seen that 30% of freight should shift to other modes, and such as rail or waterborne transport by 2030, and more than 50% in 2050, so by green freight corridors. And all this modal shift has not been achieved yet, and we have not been there. And I want to ask Sasa and Liam, why? Why we have not been there yet? I mean, what needs to be done for this modal shift, and how we could really embrace this transport supply meets demand? First, Sasa, for the waterborne industry.
Some of those things already has been said. It's all in the logistics. It's all about money. If you don't give them an incentive, or if you're not able to say you can save this and that, if you go by, I don't know, rail, then they won't do this. They will go by truck because it's fast and it's business as they know it. So they need the understanding to see the other part. So incentive, and the other thing is, do they know what we are talking about? If talking about reducing emissions, of course they understand that, but why should they do this? Why should they do this, the stakeholder? Why should he shift a container by rail and not by truck if it's same price, or if it's more flexible by doing this by truck? So we have to, I think one thing is it's connectivity, and it's the understanding of what, it's Industry 4.0. This is one new buzzword, but maybe it's a key word. It's cooperating, it's sharing data. But in the logistics, I won't say nobody, not everybody knows what Industry 4.0 means. And if they just know what the word means, what the buzzword means, they won't understand what's in there for them. So why sharing data? And what is the risk if not being part of this game? What are the chances in joining another system? And then if we connect all, maybe it's possible to show them the advantages of using then in the next step or the step after that, why going by rail, and not by truck or using the inland vessel, for example. We need more information. They have to trust these information, and they have to understand why to do other things. They do the things since the last decade, and they will do it in the next decade if we are not able to tell them why and what's in there for them, and it's money. You save money. It's not same price, it's less. Then they will go to train. Thank
you. And Liam, about rail freight?
Okay, a couple of things. I think you've got an upstream and a downstream. Good afternoon, everyone. There's an upstream and a downstream element to this. Upstream towards the suppliers, I think it picks on both these areas here. If you look at just the food industry, 99% of the people in the food industry are an SME. So SMEs are unable to understand half of these things. I'm not suggesting it's not their USP. Their USP is a small business. They've got core competencies. Their core competencies aren't understanding multimodal. They aren't understanding ICT solutions or ITS solutions. That's one element there. So we've got a myriad of small logistics players within the sector and manufacturers as well. And things. Secondly, I think with rail freight is a visibility problem in terms of a holistic supply chain. Businesses work on inventory management, so they want low amounts of inventory. The only way you get the inventory into a business is by expedited supply chains. Take in the UK, for example, and the project that we're working on, Lena, with ALIX, we have the large rail freight terminal at Daventry. When the trains are coming in from continental Europe, we have zero visibility when they're landside in Europe. We only get the visibility when they come through the tunnel. And it's impossible for large companies or small companies to manage inventory. Too much risk. So I think it's SMEs and risk.
And now coming from the other perspective, from the public authority perspective, and with all these technology trends, Martin, and keeping all the modes into consideration, rail freight, waterborne, a bit from the road perspective as well, it must be very difficult for a public authority to make the correct choice for investments. And which you think are the technology trends which will provide the benefit, the best, utmost benefit for you?
I like the question, choice for investment. We're speaking always about money. And look at public authorities side here. Where is the money? Everybody's expecting there is still money, but in fact, we are running out of resources. That's what's currently happening. And we are now in a phase where each investment we need to ensure that we have no stranded investments. That means, in principle, we have two possibilities. And what will happen more and more is the non-movement thing that we say, okay, if I do not any investments, if I do not decision on investing in A or B, I make no fault. That's saving maybe my job. Because if I invest in something which is not sustainable, it might kill me, my job, and then I have a problem. So, in fact, when we are doing investment, it needs to be based on the policy framework. You said that, you already said there is a lot out. We know that, it's maybe too much. But on the other hand, we need that because without policy frameworks, there will be no movement at all. And now looking on what is existing, then we know that a lot of knowledge is already in a lot of the traffic management systems, at least in Western Europe. I work a lot together with Southeast Europe. Their situation is a little bit different. There, if you speak there about ITS, the question is, why shall I invest in ITS? I need to bring asphalt to my roads. They have different problems, yeah? But if you're looking to Central and Western Europe, then there is a lot of information is already there. But, and here is also a big but, when we're looking on the history of infrastructure, the first thing was to build the infrastructure. The second one was to maintain it. And then they started to manage infrastructure. And that's not too long that we are doing traffic management for the different kind of modes. And now we have data. And originally, we have our hard infrastructure. We have really the road, the rail, the waterborne. And we are now maintaining a digital infrastructure, which we are not used to. I have had discussions with several infrastructure operators saying, yeah, but you have also a digital infrastructure. No, my infrastructure is the road. My infrastructure is the rail. No, sorry, you have a digital infrastructure. And lucky us, we have a framework which tells us, a policy framework which tells us what to do with the data we are currently collecting. We have sensors, we are collecting data. And those data need now to be prepared and to, provided by a standardized interface. And also here, the word standardized, that's very important. If I do investments from a public authority side, I need to do it on a standardized way, because then that ensures me that I have no stranded investments. Because standard, it's something what is a standardized and commonly agreed interface to others, so that we have no proprietary systems and so on. And I'm quite sure what we are currently doing, and it will take some time, to invest in a kind of digital infrastructure, to make this switch, saying, okay, you have a hardcore and the infrastructure for transport itself, which needs still to be operated and maintained, but in parallel, you need to maintain and operate a digital infrastructure. It's a new job, and it's something completely new to most of the infrastructure operators, especially when we are going, and that's also important. We must not only look at the trans-European network and the cities, look to the hinterland, look to the rural areas. Here we have also a huge problem really in delivering the goods to the single villages. And here we need also to learn how can we maintain, how can we build their digital infrastructure? What will it cost? What are the benefits? And I'm quite sure that here also cooperation. Trucks have data to get data back and so on. So I think dealing with digital infrastructure and setting up here a system, that is, from my perspective, one of the core things, what we need to learn also from authorities.
You are now jumping directly into the second part of the session where
sorry.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
It was not done.
No. For me, and you touched upon the issue of the physical and digital infrastructure, and I would say that out there as well, I know that there are a lot of transport solutions, and I'm looking at our class. So there are a lot of challenges for the integration of this digital and digital integration of the infrastructure, and we need to have a shared approach for both passenger and freight transport. And in order to have an understanding of the requirements, we need to have, I would say, we need to quantify these flows. And maybe you could explain to us and give some examples of technologies or processes that can assist in these challenges of digital and physical integration in the cities.
Yeah, well, if you look at transport of goods in cities from a traffic management perspective, then I think there have already been a lot of initiatives to try to optimize that. Yeah? So because on the one hand side, it is not very beneficial if the transport of goods runs into congestion and so on. On the other hand side, they're often the cause of the congestion. So there have been some initiatives to get them smoothly through the traffic and get them quickly on the location where they need to be with a predefined parking location and so on. But on the other hand side, I think it is inevitable that in the end that we will be running into the limitations of the existing infrastructure. So probably a little bit more needs to be done than just come up with tools to get the freight through the traffic on a more easy way. And unfortunately, that probably means a modal shift for the rest, because I think we cannot get from having the need of transporting goods through cities, and I think that's one of the things that is very hot now at the moment to provoke modal shifts, and there's basically only two that will really give an effect in there, and that is public transport. That's the obvious one. But another one, and I think Copenhagen is a nice example of that, they managed to get a modal shift of 43% to bikes. And that will, let's say, get a lot of traffic out of your infrastructure. And that is also a way to improve the possibility for traffic to, for heavy goods traffic to go through the city.
And you mentioned tools, and in my mind, I saw that you're also involved in Team 2.0, which is an innovation platform, and which is a bit on interactive traffic management with the service providers. And one of the topics you are dealing with is exchanging traffic management plans among service providers and the infrastructure operators. Is there an intention to the platform to extend to other modes, for example? Because now I see that you are dealing a lot with road infrastructure. Maybe there is a need for the future to investigate the links to other modes of transport. And maybe adding to the question, as a second question, if there is a win-win model that you are exploring in Team 2.0.
Well, I think in the end, definitely there will be, let's say, a link to other modal shifts. But when 3 years ago we started the platform, then we thought that road traffic was going to be complex enough to start with. But yes, I mean, we've been advanced in the process now, and we see that we are able to construct an ecosystem in which heavily connected traffic is linking with traffic management centers, etc., and the knowledge becomes more evident of what everybody is doing, also linked with third parties and so on, which means that I think we are getting to the verge of being able to not only use the possibilities that we have there to influence the traffic, etc., but also look to other modes and to see if we can solve a problem that appears to be imminent by using another modality. And I don't know at what point in time that will happen, but it's probably not going to be very far away.
That's good news, and I hope that you will keep us posted on this. That will be very nice, interesting results. But keeping on the infrastructure point of view and how transport solutions can help the infrastructure, especially if we are targeting both people and goods. I know that in ports, for example, you're not dealing only with a limited, I would say, infrastructure, but you have an enormous amount of flow of goods. And of course, you also have a lot of players, which are, I would say, in and around the terminal area. I know that within the Port of Hamburg, you have managed to have smart solutions for the infrastructure, traffic flows, and trade flows. So that's a fantastic combination of the three. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about this initiative that you are exploring in Port of Hamburg.
Yes, Lina, as you mentioned, I of course will do this. In earlier days, we always did build some new infrastructure, new bridges, new roads, and it costs a lot of time, money, and we just had no space. So the Port of Hamburg is right in the middle of the city, surrounded by urban areas, not able to grow. So we had to do some smart things. And then, I don't know, 5 years ago, we had the idea to use the IT megatrends. Today we call them IT megatrends. 5 years ago we just said there's IT solutions. So we started to collect data, and then there came in our mind we have to start several projects, and we started the Smart Port initiative, and there's 2 pillars: Smart Port Energy, caring about the environmental aspects, and Smart Port Logistics. And Smart Port Logistics integrates the traffic, the infrastructure, and the goods, and this means the data of all these 3. And where we had no data, we had to start some projects. So we started altogether more than 20 projects in that context to collect data on the roads, on the rail tracks, on movable bridges. They're open, you see this, but I will be open in 20 minutes or close in 8 minutes, for example, and data of the parking lots and so on. And then we had several projects, and we have 2 solutions that connects all that. The one is our vision of the virtual port traffic center. This is for the management, for the intermodal management, where all these information of the three transport modes and of the movable infrastructure, locks and movable bridges. We have 3 of them in the port, 140 more bridges. And then we have one view of what's going on the different modes of transport, and of course we have traffic manager for the movable infrastructure, road, rail, and the water side. But we have the one view, and this is the vision, may happen in the next 2 or 3 years, that the port operator is telling them the one in the traffic management center of the road traffic management center, do this or that. And I see at your rail operations, there's a train. Please stop that train if possible, and there will be the information. This train has to go, or it's already 10 hours late anyway, and this is happening all the time. We're not talking about minutes there, we're talking about days or hours. So you don't have to start that train now, wait 10 minutes, because we have a traffic jam there. This is the vision for the port management. And then we have the solution for our stakeholders in the port. And we also caring about these 3 kinds of data for goods, infrastructure, and roads. Our data, putting this in the cloud, and then getting data or information of our stakeholders, customs service, depots, container terminals, parking operators, and some others. They're giving us their data, or at least information. So we have this cloud-based solution where everybody is connected to everybody, and we have all the same view, not the same. We don't see we just see all the trucks, but we don't know who's running, for example, them. The freight forwarders just sees all his trucks with all the names, but we all have the relevant information. And then it's possible to be connected and say, hey, I'm having a problem, or this truck is too early. He booked a slot, for example. It's too early. He has to wait on a parking facility, or I know 20 other trucks will be late. I know their estimated time of arrival if I'm the dispatcher of the container terminal, for example. So you truck, please don't wait. Come now. I know your appointment. It's is in an hour, but if you're already here, just come to us. We will serve you, and then you go. So this is the cloud-based connectivity for information, for communication of all our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you very much.
I had exactly the same discussion with somebody from the Port of Rotterdam. Same sort of problems.
Yeah, we all have the same problems, and we all have more or less the same ideas, but we don't have the same solutions. But this would be then the next step. If it doesn't matter which solution, if you already have a platform, let's be connected, just an interface, and let's share information at least, or data.
And maybe some additional automation, for example. It's another buzzword, and of course, they all claim that automation will, I would say, change the way we see, especially from this integrated transport for people and goods. And most of the times, all these different automation solutions are either targeting either the vehicle or the infrastructure point of view. And again, how do you think, Nico, the question is for you, how do you think automation will have an impact to the port hinterland or even with the city linkages? And I'm thinking again about the last mile, and maybe how this will be one, for example, solutions for all the challenges that at the moment the ports are facing.
There are various answers to that. Actually, I'm quite surprised that in the transport in the transport sector, that automation, truck platooning, all those kind of things is taking up currently as it does, because not because the benefits for the logistics sectors is at this moment quite small. There's something in fuel, but it doesn't compare to the cost they currently have to make to implement it, to buy a new truck, to instruct the drivers differently. That on one side, and that is something we are looking in currently. What are the other benefits which we can give to the logistics sector, such that they are going to use it after we're out of the bus, after we're out of the pilots. On the other hand, the Port of Rotterdam is saying from 2020, or in 2020, around 200 truck platoons will leave the Port of Rotterdam per day. So there's something going on like, okay, guys, we don't really know what the business case is, but we are going to do it. We are going forward. We are going for it, and it will happen one way or the other. And that's sort of with the technology push that you see at one side, taking up, technology will be there, but the business case is difficult to grasp.
I see Martin nodding your head, and I'm terribly excited to know about your comments to that statement.
Yep.
And especially by having Port of Rotterdam announcing about these new plans.
Yeah, lucky me, I'm in Austria. I have no big port on the seaside to manage. Speaking about automation, speaking about platoons crossing the Alps, crossing the city of Vienna, these are new challenges for authorities, huge new challenges. And for me, I see automation, it's really, we need to have a digital infrastructure, because who is telling the platoon to break up on a motorway because a conventional car, you can't imagine, there is a car without ITS systems inside, wants to enter the motorway. Or do I have the platoon on the in UK very right, in Austria on the very wrong way? No, the left line. No. However, in the central lane of the motorway, so I think that they have this legal framework existing. Even we have, I hear the plans also in Austria, and we are also speaking about truck platooning challenges and how to do that. And let's make a showcase. And just today, our minister showed the roadmap towards automation in Austria and what we want to do, and an action plan and so on. Yeah, but there is so much to do. And if everybody speaks, and we can have it. I heard already in 10 years, in 5 years, in 20 years. Knowing how long it takes to change a legal system and to change also maybe the logic behind that and the logic of driving, which will influence also the individual car. Yes, the technology is there, but governance systems and organizational models, and who is responsible to give allowance to build a platoon and how to break it up.
In the end, you're going to have traffic laws for both passenger and trucks. And I think this is the mixed traffic flow. That will be a challenge. And I think that this is a challenge that the public authority is facing.
And if something happens, the first thing will be, it was the public authority allowing this mixed traffic. Nobody will go to an OEM and say, oh, you did there a problem. We know now by Tesla, yes, okay, with the incidents that happening, everybody was saying, okay, it's Tesla, and nobody is blaming the authority giving permission that this semi-automated car is allowed to drive. But in principle, when we have a complete mobility system, and there is a general allowance of this mixed traffic, I don't know how that will result up.
Well, maybe I can say something about it, because we just landed a European project to do some research on that, and that's, let's say, managing platoons within the city, and that is of automated vehicles and trying to deliver goods and so on. And the way that we're thinking right now is that basically the traffic controllers on the intersection will do the management of the platoons, and they have to be able to distinguish between, let's say, fully automated vehicles and vehicles who are not automated, and that's indeed tricky. So if they're all automated, it's simple, because then you just like Lego, but you also have to try to find out the ones who are totally not connected. How do you fit them in? But it looks promising. I think there are possibilities.
But again, it's something somebody needs to invest in.
True. So we do.
Yeah, no, it's.
I think
I'm not saying no, yeah, but the point is really, what are the priorities?
but the thing is, if I come back to like say clean cities, we're sort of past that with for the logistic part becoming more lean, it will become more green. It's now stay lean and become greener, but it will cost a little bit more money. But we have to become cleaner. So we have to, coming back to my first statement, we have to do it together, and we need to know what the different options are of technology, of policies, of logistic systems, of ITS, of cars, electric, etc. What are the options, and where are we going for? Do we want to achieve the objectives of 2013, 2050, we need a roadmap for that. And that will be for every hinterland, for every city, it will be slightly different, but you need a long-term perspective of how to act. And platooning can be part of it. But if you want to do something platooning, then you come back to, okay, you have to give the logistic field some carrots.
No sticks, but carrots.
No sticks, carrots.
But
Because there are a lot of sticks already for the logistic piece, so you have to give them some carrots now. So it has to be part of a longer-term roadmap where platooning might fit in, might not fit in, depending on where you are and what you want to achieve. And I think that's very important. And we need that roadmap soon, based on facts, because it's difficult to implement a long-term roadmap because the public is part of it, and part of policy making is making it difficult.
But it's also important what kind of goal you're after. I mean, if you look at platooning, that's not the most optimal solution for getting rid of carbon dioxide. I mean, if you really want to do something about that, then come with some sort of rule that all the heavy goods transport in the cities should be electrical, because that's where it goes wrong. That is where it happens. So if that is the goal, then that's a much better way to do it.
There is an argument, particularly on the last mile delivery. I was having a discussion recently in the UK. There's a rise of same-day delivery and within the hour delivery.
Yeah.
And that discussion spurned with some major retailers the need for automated vehicles in London. I said, well, actually, I think there's another way to look at it. Does a consumer, when they've spent 4 months deciding whether to buy a new iPhone, need it within the hour? So actually, coming back to your point, we need to understand, does the consumer behaviours, and do we actually need this? Or will we set up infrastructure that...
Staying into the consumer behavior and going a bit to the traveler perspective, because we have covered a bit, I would say, the goods and the goods perspective from the infrastructure and from the infrastructure point of view. We have seen that a lot of local authorities have control of what's happening in their, of course, in their transport planning in the cities, but most of the times that they have a limited role in other transport modes. So what transport starts and ends, so there is problems of interconnection, standardization, etc. I know that in Northampton, you are now changing the urban mobility model. So you are, I would say, you're talking about new business, new mobility models. And can you please give some examples of how you have managed that in Northampton City?
Well, I think firstly, we're trying to go back to basics and gain control. I think we need to get hold of that first of all. I think lots of stuff in. I won't be an academic and steal other things I've heard while I've been at the conference, but Marseille, however you would pronounce it, seems to be the way forward. We as a local authority, I obviously I'm not a local authority, I represent them in a project, but what we've found is a lot of our current infrastructure is just not connected. We're procuring services in isolation. So over here we're procuring buses to go to logistics parks, we're procuring train services over here, special needs over here. And we've got massive amounts of inefficiency within our systems. So before we even get to flying drones and automated vehicles and good ITS, we need to understand the basics of what we have. So to drive that, and what I've heard a lot of throughout the conference is what is the business model? And one of the things that again, the caveat, I don't know what the business model is fully, but one of the things we're looking at doing is creating what we call a social enterprise, which is, in a nutshell, is a procurement cloud that will procure services by a synergistic process rather than isolation, so from a start off. And putting the user centrally to this now, as a local authority, we're only looking at this from a public transport sector at the moment, so we're looking at things like buses and bikes and all that sort of good stuff. I'm a supply chain guy and I'm biased and I want to start bringing the packages, what we call in supply, in the merging transit. So I want to see when you order your John Lewis shopping or whatever it might be, or your new Apple iPhone, it knows you're leaving London. It can track your smartphone or something like that, and it'll merge it at the train station with you. So there are some of the things, I mean, I could talk for hours on this, no way, but there's some of the things that we are looking at. But one of the things that we haven't got a handle on, I'm sorry, I'm not backing Michael up here, we haven't got some business together, but it is about it is about the data. We need to understand the data, and the data's coming out in different formats. We've got contracts that are written, I'm not going to give away names, but they're written that say, yes, I'm a service provider to you, but I don't have to give you the data on the customers I'm moving for you. And I'm thinking that's just bloody madness, to be honest with you. And so we need to think about the whole procuring stuff. So we really need to go back to basics. I know this is an ITS conference, it's about innovation and stuff. But if we can't get the basics right, we're never going to get to all the great stuff that you guys are trying to achieve with infrastructure and stuff. So.
I'm a bit, so you mentioned mass, and I see that it's not only mass, and there are a lot of solutions which are popping up, and we have a lot of platforms, data platforms out there, and new apps and new solutions. And I would say the key perception behind mass is to offer, travelers and goods mobility solutions based on the travel patterns, travel needs. And I think it's interesting to know from your perspective, class, how this works. I mean, maybe you can give us some, I would say, examples of how mass is working.
Well, basically, I would say mass is something that adaptively plans your journey. So depending on the conditions, on the weather, etc., when you want to be somewhere, it will come up with a proposal. And even if it goes wrong somewhere halfway, the traffic jam, something like it should change, that you can go into another modality. So that let's say you're constantly being taken care of from begin to the end of your journey. And I think it's a good initiative. There's only one thing that I think that is, and that more or less links to what I said in the beginning, is that we need a big modal shift to be able to get our transportation system to go again. And that is that it seems that, for example, the modal shift into public transport gets stuck. There's some sort of glass ceiling in there, and I was recently at ITF Congress in Leipzig, International Transport Forum, and there was also a lot of discussion on non-public transport. And there I heard a perspective that I hadn't thought about before, and they said, well, the reason that this is not picking up is that nobody looks at it from the user experience, because
Exactly.
People do not mind that it takes a little bit longer, but they more or less want to have the experience like they have when they're in their own car. So they want comfort, they want to be able to sit, has to be clean, modern, Wi-Fi, and that sort of thing. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges to make mass really work. I think to a certain extent we can just convert what's currently happening into that, but for it really to take off, I think a little bit more needs to happen.
And I'm thinking that I have all the difficult questions for you, Martin. Who should own mobility sharing platforms? Is that the private companies? Is that the cities? Or it's the people who should own the platforms?
I don't like the word own. Yeah, mobility is not owned by anybody. What I see, and I completely agree, we need to work on public transport, for sure. I think here in Central Europe we are doing a good job. We see that in Vienna, we see that also in Czech Republic. The public transport is getting more and more used. It's really growing, the use of them. But at the end, when we are speaking about mobility as a service, and we are already there, Then we are speaking about integrating data, providing already services, and mobility as a service is the integration of different kind of services. And there will be services coming from public authorities. It will be the services for public transport, it will be a service for ticketing, it might be a service which we have already in Austria established for GIS data, for travel information services, but in parallel there will be services coming from the private sector, weather services, there will be floating car services. And then there are integrators, and I think this integration level for providing mobility as a service, that's open. There everybody can build on the other services, because then we are overcoming the whole problem about data security, data ownership, data privacy. We are combining services. And if I mention I get the services from this and that platform, then it's much easier, because I would like to have my service as a national authority to be integrated in other services, in bigger services towards the end user. And at the end, of course, the end user hopefully will use mobility as a service solutions. It needs to be built for them, but hopefully we are doing our basic services as good that they will choose public transport. Really, because if we end up and saying, okay, I have my package, and we know about the packages, and I have in my package, I have in 5 hours taxi drive. That's great, and I still have 5 hours left this day, so I will not go by public transport. It's convenient to have the taxi in front of my door, even if it's an eco-friendly and decarbonized taxi. Yeah? Do we want that? So even for mobility as a service, we need to think about how do the framework look like, and that's something, again, the framework for allowing what works, what does not work. This is something, again, a new challenge for public authorities, which we never thought about. Yeah, we are doing public transport, but mobility as a service at the end is also a kind of public service, even not done by public authorities. Yeah, but it's a public service integrating different kind of modes.
I have a question. Yes, please.
Can I just add to that? Because that's one of the reasons that we took a social enterprise approach to this, because we don't believe that any one person should own this. Therefore, we've gone for this stakeholder approach. So each person, so businesses, operators, the user can all be they're all a percentage stakeholder in the business. And by doing that, we think we've got over the data issues, because we're making you, the user, in charge of your own data. We're not in charge of your data, you are, because you are running the social enterprise. That's why we've adopted that approach.
But I'm coming again to another buzzword, Uber. And
Exactly.
which is, I would say this, and everybody's saying, well, it's fantastic technology, but is it really that Uber has really, is it Uber who has using disruptive technologies, or Uber is really taking into consideration travel patterns? Because it might be that it's not the quality of service, but it's the needs that you are really taking into consideration, the travel patterns of not only the users but of goods, and not really exploiting the disruptive technologies. I think these are actually as a tool or solutions. Nico?
Yeah, I'm still struggling with something else, which has to do with the same thing. Because if you're looking at mobility as a service, and we're looking here like, we're all in suits, grey, old, whatever.
I mean, why?
We come from a background that we can control things and manage things and get things done. And what Uber shows us, what Airbnb shows us, is that if there's a need and if there's an infrastructure of cars, you can use it for taxi. Houses, I'm not here, use my house, and I build a service. Mobility is the same thing. There is public, there are cars, there are bikes, whatever, and you can use it. Use that as a service. There's a whole new social thing happening that is going to put us out of control. It's going to put us out of place, even the standard companies. And what we see currently is that also from government, they try to regulate Uber because there are taxis, and They bring in money, they have to do a lot of things, they have their safety issues, there are other issues that the government is responsible as well. The same with Airbnb in Amsterdam, and I think in more other cities. You're only allowed to supply your house for a number of days because there are other issues involved there, because only people will rent their house, and people who want to live in Amsterdam and are born in Amsterdam can't get a house. So there are other factors that actually prohibit all these kind of things. And that's such, well, you're not saying it that directly, but I see the difference as a government that you're in. Because if it's not there, and if there's a need, if you wouldn't regulate it, and if there's a need, none of us will have control over it, because it will happen. It will be there. And probably sooner if you think. It might be in 2 or 3 years. Things will pop up that we don't imagine yet, and that if we look back at it, we say, oh, that's exactly what we meant with mobility as a service.
Yes, please.
But when such things happen, and Uber is the final solution, why shall I invest then in a digital infrastructure? It's a principal question, yeah? Because I need to do sustainable investments.
I think Uber is the closest to making the back office for mass. Definitely. I mean, they only have to extend the system with a couple of other modalities, and they're already there. So, and I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens. But maybe also other ones pop up. I mean, in the beginning, Uber was alone, and now we've got Lyft, and we've got also the champions are challenged. The market will do its work, I guess.
And now, jumping from the mobility as a service and a bit more about combined mobility for people, and going a bit again about the mobility of goods, we have seen so many examples of the last mile delivery, and we have seen so many examples not working. And what was the problem? I mean, what were their Achilles heel, if I have to say that in Greek terms, for their and if we need to reinvent the last mile. Because nowadays what we see is that last mile is becoming, I would say, outside of the city, and it's even not even outside of the city center. And in the end, you are leaving from the city center, and then you are in need of going back to deliver.
Still, it greatly depends what you want to do as a city. In a city, it is difficult now to... an example, e-commerce coming up, the iPhone as soon as possible, and almost for nothing delivery costs. It's still a wonder why. But also the vans, the small trucks, are the most polluting cars, transports in the city. 10% of the whole fleet are the vans. 50% of the NOx emissions come from these vans currently. If you want to do something about it, you have to do something about that. But that's a long-term investment comprising a Department of Economy, Logistics, etc., comprising transport, comprising environment, and who's going to make the investment for whom. For a city, it's quite difficult how they're organized now, also with political flavors of who's in the Senate now and who's going to be in the Senate in 3 or 4 years, to make those kind of decisions on the long term. And that's where there are so many good ideas and also pilots being done on the last mile. But that are not working is because they're pilot based on an idea, but not on a long-term vision, not on a long-term achievement. What do we want to change here?
You were discussing about also the vision, and I would say most of the cities are taking into consideration the sustainable urban mobility plans. And now we have another fashion, the SULPs, which is sustainable urban logistic plans. And how these two can coexist, because maybe you have different departments in the local authorities working into different... Again, I'm going to TM 2.0 because everything is linked to each other about exchange of traffic management plans. And then you have different platforms at local level working at different issues within the local authority perspective. Are there any good examples that we can see where we can see this sumps and sulps working together in an efficient way?
I can give an answer, but I don't know if...
Yes, please.
They work in China. Because what...
It's near to us.
Yeah, no, but again, it comes down to the same thing again. What you see in China, we're doing sums there where they're going to build a city in 5 years, 20 million people, how we're going to make a sustainable urban mobility plan, and how it's going to look like. And even in Shenzhen, we're doing it. And there's the different departments. There's one person who's deciding there for a longer term. And if they go this way, they go that way. All the other things that what we see in the European cities where we do the sums for is exactly, they start to talk together using the sum, but it's still difficult to get the long-term implementation going.
And I'm again finishing with your last sentence. You see a lot of industries working together. And I want to ask Liam about this new trend where companies are working together under a horizontal collaboration scheme and a competitive, I would say, approach towards capacity building, towards the capacity of the load. Mm-hmm. Can you please expand on this new concept? And what is new into this, I would say, scheme? And
I don't think anything's new. I think it's always been there, the need to be competitive, and I think we always knew that we had to share resources, but nobody was actually bold enough to do it. So there are a lot of people, particularly in retail in the UK at the moment, where there are supermarkets now that are taking their brands off the side of the trailer in order to deliver their goods with their competitors' goods to the store, and they're backhauling stuff, and they've almost turned their transport departments, the logistics departments, into profit centres. So they're starting to wake up to the need to be competitive or competition in logistics. But I still see issues. When I only recently had a conversation with some leading retailers where we were trying to sort some issues out in a logistics sense, and I couldn't get the three of them to sit in the same room. But if I went one tier upstream in the supply chain to the manufacturers, two of the largest manufacturers in Europe, I could get them to sit in the room and pass the message. It was like dealing with children. It was, I hate to say that, but it was really obvious what they need to do, but you can't get them to agree on stuff. So I don't know what the magic answer is. They know they need to do it, but
technology,
they almost need to shake the tree a little bit.
So we have horizontal collaboration, I mean, competitors working together in an environment, and we have new innovative concepts like Internet of Things. And maybe Nico can help here. So we see that there is a new phenomenon, I would say, called physical internet, which is going to change the way we see and how goods will be moving in the future. How will we think this global supply chain? Is it going to change how we see the supply chain evolving?
If we really talk about Internet of Things, it will completely change the logistics sector. And just imagine that there will be a technology, and it will be there soon, that you have very cheap chips that you can put on each package. And the chip is so intelligent that it will actually be a small TomTom. So each packet will decide how it's going to move through the logistic chain. And if a packet is going to decide to do it, like the internet works, where's the less congestion, what's the speed in delivery, what kind of money is involved. If they can decide themselves, then the whole logistic field, you don't need logistic planners anymore. It's going to be different in any case. We're talking about synchromodality as something that a transporter or a shipper decides how to do it. But if packets decide, like, okay, guys, take your time, or use an inland vessel for me, that's fine. It will change. If you take that as a vision, it will change completely. Now, that won't happen tomorrow. It won't happen immediately. But it will happen quite soon already with larger packets or with containers or even with fresh food where you can put some things on because you've got some time issues on that, or on bulk goods which don't care about timing. You can already use that because they can be shipped a lot cheaper if they decide something like that. So I think it's going to change. That's one of the things. We talk about platooning, we talk about Internet of Things. I could talk about 3D printing, another technology which will change the logistics systems. But it also gives chances to logistics systems with ITS, because that's where they come together one way or the other. The intelligence of what ITS is and what they build up combined to these kind of breaking trends in the logistics system.
So we saw physical internet and horizontal collaboration. Will we ever see the same, I would say, operators moving both people and goods? So meaning a public transport system moving people and goods and really deciding in a synchromodal way how these are going to fit. And the question is for you, Martin.
Thank you. Well prepared. Now, public transport systems delivering goods, quite difficult. We have had, long time ago, we have had a tram delivering goods at nights, and in fact it didn't work, yeah? Because the problem is that public transport is not doing a delivery directly to the house or directly to an address. Mm-hmm. It's somewhere in the center of the road, or maybe it's on the bus stop, yeah? So we're still missing the last mile, yeah? So it's the delivery close to the place. If you're looking on drones, and maybe then the package will flow from along. We don't know. We know about all the tests with drones and so on, yeah? Maybe it will work if we have not the lights above that and all the cables that are above the streets, or it will navigate through that. We don't know what will happen there, yeah? If we are really doing a last delivery, and if a drone says, okay, I can do 500 meters or even 100 meters, then it might be an option that the package goes with the bus close to the delivery point and then will fly immediately in front of the door. But this will be not the job of the public authority, I need to say. Yeah, we can, of course, we can think about how to implement such package distribution stations close to public transport. But this is nothing, at least where I'm aware, that we did already some tests or some pilots about.
We have the tram in Dresden and the Phaeton, the VW thing. But if we think a step further, or thinking first step back, 3 years ago, we had in Hamburg, some investor had the idea for a container tube for about 20 kilometers for connecting dry port with the seaport. And he thought, I'm talking about 2 billion investment of 2 billion euro, and he was keen to do so for several or maybe obvious reason. This did not happen. But now we see Elon Musk is going on to do his hyperloop, or how we call this. So we have this going on, and he showed that this might happen during the next few years. And then going back to the next step, container loop. Maybe it's all in the same loop. It's container and people's transport. I don't know if this might happen, but why not? Ideas are there. Technique might be there. I don't know if this has any sense, but
no, for sure that might happen. Look to the railway network. You have one package which is passenger, and the next package which is freight. So that's.
I mean, the trains are doing it already.
Yeah.
And
airplanes.
Yeah.
There's a thing going on in the UK at the minute. There's a study going on by Prologis, the warehousing people, and they're looking at the changing dynamics of cities and the fact that people can't afford to live in them anymore. If you're a truck driver or something, the skills are coming out of the cities. So they're looking at how do we get stuff in there. So one of the ideas they came up with were high-speed trains. and they'll build the warehouses by the high-speed railways, and your iPhones, things you order, retails, light stuff, go into a little cage, go onto the train, shoot down to London in 45 minutes, and then they're delivered by little wheelie robots that are going on the streets. But then we have an issue then, who's culpable to the robots going along the pavement, and if they run them over. So there's an appetite in the UK at the moment to look at existing infrastructure before we build other infrastructure such as tunnels. But again, I think it's going on the too difficult pile in terms of that real last mile delivery in terms of automation.
So a bit putting it into a perspective, if you have to think about one barrier for an integrated transport for people and goods, just give me one barrier and the why. Class.
A traditional barrier in ITS business is always standardization. Unfortunately, we've got an industry that where we have to reinvent everything that we build for each and every country that we want to sell it. And I must say, with the things that are currently going on, it looks like we're about to create new systems that will not have that problem anymore. For example, a corridor from Rotterdam to Vienna, and a number of 10T corridors that are being realized right now. Although I'm already seeing again that people have their own ideas about it, so I'm very much afraid that gets traction, and I try to get rid of it as quickly as possible. But yeah, I think if that would be taken care of, then we would have logistical ITS systems, etc., that would work throughout Europe, and it would also free up. If you look at our industry, it would free up an awful lot of money that we currently have to invest in following all those standards, and then we could put that into real research, etc., to further our goals. So.
Thank you for that. Going back to the audience, because you have been quite silent. If maybe you could tell me what you think is the barrier for an integrated transport for people and goods. Wow, excitement. I think we are in the last sessions of today. Yes, please. Please stand up. And your name and company, please.
Very big room.
Quite large.
Okay.
So I'm Chris Chambers from Ordnance Survey in Britain. So I've heard a lot about last mile delivery and last mile, but to me it means something different to everyone. I think I wonder actually, does last mile mean different to each of the panel members? Because to me, to a lot of people, last mile is about postcodes. So you've got a postcode system and the difference between an address and a postcode. But actually, to me, it's about, well, what happens from the road to the front door, what happens when you're in the front door to the element within the block of flats, for example, or within. So what does last mile mean to you? And actually, what's the problem? Quite a good question. Sorry.
Who wants to take that question?
Last mile, if I stick with the textbook academic,
Thank you.
is the piece to the customer. So from the distribution center to the customer, but then I would throw a question back at you or the wider audience and say, actually, it goes beyond that, because we have this thing called circular economy now, and it's not about getting the goods to the customer. It's about what you do with end of life. So how do you get all the packaging back, the waste, when you finish with your iPhone? So perceptions of last mile, it should never stop. It should be a closed loop supply chain. So that's my perception of it. So it sounds like I'm evading the question, but it never is the last mile, because it goes on, the product goes on to be something else down the line. And when we design logistics systems, that's the way we should be doing it, not just the drone to the door. There's a reverse logistics piece to this as well that we're not factoring in, I believe.
Any other barrier which you think we need to solve before we start integrating transport for people and goods? What we have not thought about this session? Do we miss anything?
Dina?
Yes.
Sorry. I'm not sure. Yeah, I have done no research on that, and I'm not aware of any on that. But just thinking on what happened in the last 100, 500 years. Originally, packages were delivered together with people. If you had been in the wild, wild west, you know that, yeah, on the horses, You had, I don't know how the English word is, but everything was delivered together. If you look to postal services, the first buses, they delivered the packages and people. It worked. But then they identified, there are completely different, maybe also value chain, but also service chains. They really divided those things. Traditionally, trains in Austria delivered both. Today, they are going in parallel because it's easier to operate them in parallel. I don't know. I have never heard anything about that. Does it really make sense? Does it work to merge those things again together? I have doubts. I'm quite sure that there are reasons that they divided those two things. And if you're speaking about high-speed trains, in Austria, high-speed is used for people, not for goods up to now. If you would need a high-speed infrastructure for goods, which has completely different stations, because I don't need to deliver a good to the main station. I need to deliver goods to my commercial areas. Yeah? So the stations would need to change. I would need to have another rail infrastructure. I need to have to adapt that. I'm not so sure if those things really work one by one together. It would be interesting from the research perspective, but just from the operation, I don't know. There needs to be, there needs to be reasons that those two things have been divided.
But there is an element of clusters there, aren't there? So what we're saying, if we go back to the Wild Wild West.
Sorry, but
we need to be.
Because it actually sounds like one of the projects I'm working with at the minute, so I can kind of. But I think we've built infrastructure in different ways. We built cities over here, and we built ports over there, and we built rail terminals over here. And to reverse that would be prohibitively expensive. I mean, it was the point you were making earlier about investment. I mean, you've got, what's the average margin in logistics? 2%, 3%? Max. And that's doing good. So, and you were going to say, I tell you what, move all the sheds to the city. It's not going to happen, is it?
I think it's also what problem do you have to solve? I mean, I think with the increasing urbanization that is going on, then the cities will be our challenge in the future, which means that many more of those iPhones need to go into that city. And there's a limited amount
You need to say other phones are available.
Other phones. But the amount of infrastructure that is available is limited, and the capacity of it is as well. So I think the question about merging the capacity for goods and people is just coming from efficiency, and trying to do that as good as possible. And not so much that we need to squeeze people in boxes in the same thing. But in order to keep the system going, we probably have to do something like that in the future.
Saying
sorry.
Delivering iPhones to the city, it's still cheap. For me, the challenge is delivering iPhones to the last village in a valley in the Alps, because that's expensive. It's only one iPhone. To the city, I have a huge package. And if you divide the delivery costs for 100 iPhones, it's more or less, it's something, I know, but it's, to the price, it's nothing. But one iPhone to the last village in a valley, will we ensure that they still get the iPhone? And we will say, okay, sorry, you are so far away from the central areas, but then we have, again, then the policy needs to step in, because what will happen? What will happen to the Alp valleys? What will happen to the whole rural areas? We will lose the people there. We will lose the culture.
And this is the costly
thing. This is also
but I think that's already happening through the increased urbanization. So,
Exactly.
And of course, the business case becomes increasingly difficult for the rural area. That's evident.
Going back to our fantastic audience. Before I go to the speakers and ask them about the vision, what is your vision about the integrated transport for people and goods? Let's say in 2030. Some other ideas? Any fantastic ideas about the vision? How do you imagine yourselves in 30 years?
30
living
years.
and... No? Yes, please.
one source, and you have so many different various sources of data. How do you bring it together? And I think once that nut is cracked, I think the actual service to access that, as we have in our Uber is there now, actually that service is available. It's just integrating multiple data sets. So I very much hope that by 2030, I'll be able to just have my one app that pays for my service, that takes me from A to B, and if I have a puncture, it says the nearest bus stop's over there. I get on the bus. It takes, I don't want to have anything in my head. I just want to be able to use an app to get me to where I want to get, or get my service to my package, or my iPhones to the middle of the Alps, or Ireland, off the coast of Scotland. I want to get that without me knowing. I don't want to think about it. I want to do it.
Okay. Can we do it? Can we do his vision? I'm looking at the world best industry and public authorities. Can we do his vision in 2030?
I think that in 2030 we will have a very well functioning mass system, which doesn't require you to think about anything anymore. Just say where you want to go and it will take care of it in a very optimal way. Probably using automated vehicles, all sorts of stuff, etc.
Martin?
If you have a good functioning mass system, and this is my very personal view, then it will work in the cities, but not in the countryside. Because the private sector will focus where the money can be done. And that's really a personal view. I would advise public authorities to think on the hinterland, to think on the rural areas, and to focus the investments in that area, that people living there have the same quality of services and same access to services than people living in cities. I don't know how to achieve that, but we really, and that's what authorities work at, we need to serve all our citizens and not just a specific number. And that's really important for me, and therefore I also need to really say the focus needs to be also on the rural areas. And looking to Austria, we still have a huge number of people living in rural areas, living in the Alps, and we need to support them.
Yeah. Luckily, we don't have that kind of rural areas in the Netherlands, so I can focus on the city. We don't have that kind of problems that much. But if I just look at the city, and then I've got sort of a wish thing, even though it's probably not, I know it's not, we're not going to achieve it, but then I look at a city where in 2030 we do meet the emission CO2 limits, but also it will have changed. The parking places outside the city and not in the city. The last mile delivery is being done in a sort of shared type economy, because I do think there's a new trend from individualism that we had the last 20, 30 years to more shared economy, and the generation behind us is more into that. So where you have a local distribution center where things are delivered, and my neighbor will bring in all my stuff as well if he goes there anyway. And I hope there will be also free public transport. And a lot of cyclists. We can do that in the Netherlands, which all will add to it. That's if I look at a city in there. I know it's going to be difficult because parking garages bringing a lot of money. We have to change something about if we want to make public transport for free. We have to change many other things, but if we could design sort of a green field, I think we would start there. But the current situation and evolution will not bring us there in 2030. But I hope we will make some steps.
Any final thoughts?
I guess we will see drones. We'll see them on the last mile, I guess. And in the logistics, I think we will have autonomous trucks driving, at least in a closed ecosystem like a port, or connecting hubs via an autobahn. Yeah. And I hope that we will talk about then paperless logistics. And the session before I mentioned that they really love paper, and my vision is, I don't know if this will happen in 15 years, but I guess my vision is we will have the day that there's no paper in logistics.
No printer
Except
in
in
the
the
truck.
paper logistics, of course, but yeah.
They do that in Austria with crocodile.
Yeah, we have some. Yeah, there are some
There are some
solutions
initiatives.
there.
Not good
but
enough, I
logistics
understand.
has to
There are
print
some
something.
initiatives, but I think we are working now with the Digital Transport and Logistics Forum on how we will move to this cross-border corridor digitalization of documents and also digital systems in a generic level. So, yes, please.
It's probably not a question, it's more an idea about my vision. It kind of links into what you said earlier, but for me, I think it's important to have everything delivered on time. So if it says my package is coming at 10:28, I expect it to be there at that time. I think it would be quite difficult to do that if you've got the goods with people, travelling with people. I think it would be difficult to manage that. So it's just
In the Netherlands, a company is starting in delivering food. And what they particularly get, they've got a sort of distribution center. It's not a supermarket. It's just specialized in delivering food. It's located at just outside the city, outside the city center. And what they're especially good at is delivering the food at the promised time within minutes. So it is possible.
But what's the cost of that?
It's cheaper than getting the food delivered from a supermarket currently.
So there is a win-win situation,
Yeah.
new business models.
Yeah,
coming
and it's
up.
doing it in 2 or 3 cities now.
So I'd just like to add one thing. I think that as an overall, in terms of mass and everything, logistics or passenger transport, actually predominantly passenger transport, I think we need to eradicate short-termism in the industry. So, for example, you go into Northamptonshire and there are like 9 or 10 different apps just for the local authority that I have to download. And then when I drive to the next local authority in Milton Keynes, I need to download another 10 apps. Actually, now my iPhone or other brands or whatever it is has now run out of battery before I get down to the next thing. And when you're talking about how do you convince people to change modes, we're not actually helping ourselves as an industry because it's just, there's too much noise, as I call it, out there. We need the standardization that you're looking for. You
That's
mentioned
also
earlier.
a bit triggered by let's say, public authorities, because they see a possibility now is that the industry is starting to do all sorts of things that they did in the past, and so it saves them money. But what you see happening indeed is that there's such a wealth of stuff coming up that somewhere in the future they will probably have to step in again and bring it back to proportions, otherwise it doesn't work anymore.
I promised to someone that we need to stop at 5:25 because there is a presentation coming up in the commission stand. So if you are there, please go and listen to Martin Boom from Austriotech. He's having a presentation at the commission stand. So I promised to him that we will stop at 5:25. So I hope that you have enjoyed this session. We have managed to keep it live and with interaction. So if you have any questions, please come back to us and we're happy to reply. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to you.
Thank you, Lina.
Thank you.
Yeah. So.